The skull was never found. For 8 centuries, the world assumed it knew exactly who Genghis Khan was, a Mongolian warrior born of the steppe, blood linked to the people who still carry his name. Then Grok AI cross-referenced the most complete ancient DNA dataset ever assembled against every known male-line descendant of the Borjigin clan. What came back didn't match the assumption. It matched something older, something that predates Mongolia as a concept by 3,000 years. The bones of the greatest conqueror in human history have never been recovered. That single fact has protected a myth for 800 years. No skeleton, no definitive genetic profile, no biological anchor to the man himself. Only the records his own descendants wrote, and the genetic traces passed down through millions of living men who may or may not share his blood. You have been told, as the entire world has been told, that Genghis Khan was Mongolian, that he emerged from the Mongolian steppe, built his empire from Mongolian tribal roots, and left behind a Mongolian genetic legacy. This is the foundation of the story. It is also the part the DNA evidence cannot confirm. To understand why, you need to understand what Genghis Khan's world actually looked like before he conquered it, because it looked almost nothing like the map modern history draws around him. The steppe in the 12th century was not a Mongolian homeland. It was a corridor, a 4,000-mile biological mixing zone where Tungusic peoples from the forests of Siberia pressed against Turkic groups moving east from Central Asia, and both collided with early Mongolic-speaking tribes whose own origins remain, even now, genetically unresolved. The man born in 1162 near the Unan River was named Temujin. His clan, the Borjigin, is recorded in the secret history of the Mongols as having descended from a blue-gray wolf and a fallow deer. Origin myths that are cosmological, not genealogical. His father, Yeshuge, was a minor tribal leader. His people called themselves Mongol, and for 8 centuries the world took the name at face value. The mainstream explanation is straightforward. Genghis Khan was a Mongolian tribesman who unified warring clans under a single identity and conquered the known world. His genetic legacy, identified in the landmark 2003 study published in Nature, is said to live in approximately 16 million men across Asia today, carried in a Y chromosome lineage called haplogroup C2, M2M277. That study became the most cited piece of popular science in ancient genetics history. The phrase, "the most successful man who ever lived," measured in reproductive terms, entered the cultural vocabulary. Schools taught it. Documentaries repeated it. The genetic lineage became inseparable from the Mongolian national identity. There is one problem. The geographic distribution of that lineage has never quite fit. When geneticists plot where haplogroup C2 is most concentrated today, the highest frequencies do not appear in central Mongolia. They appear among the Kazakhs of Kazakhstan, among the Buryat people of southern Siberia, among the Tungusic Evenki, who live in forests north of the Mongolian border. The Mongolian population itself carries the lineage, but not at the frequencies the story predicts. The center of the genetic signal is not where the center of the myth is. Researchers have explained this for decades as the result of conquest. The lineage spread outward as Mongol armies moved west and north. That explanation is reasonable. It may even be partially correct, but it assumes the lineage originated in Mongolia, and that assumption has never been proven. Then came the datasets that changed the analysis. In 2020, a team publishing in Science Advances completed the most comprehensive genomic study ever conducted on Xiongnu remains, the Xiongnu being the powerful steppe confederation that preceded the Mongol Empire by more than 1,000 years and occupied much of the same territory. What they found was not a genetically homogeneous Mongolian population. The Xiongnu showed deep admixture between Western Eurasian ancestry, genetic signals associated with populations from Iran and the Pontic steppe, and Eastern Eurasian ancestry, more typical of Siberian forest peoples. Not a single founding population. A biological crossroads. This matters because the Borjigin clan, Genghis Khan's own lineage, did not emerge from nowhere. They emerged from a landscape that had been genetically mixing for 3,000 years before Temujin was born. The Tungusic peoples, whose genetic signal clusters most strongly with haplogroup C2 today, were not a peripheral presence on that steppe. They were among its oldest inhabitants. Their DNA predates the Mongolian linguistic and cultural identity by millennia. Grok AI processing the most complete compilation of ancient and modern genomic datasets currently available. Trace the probable origin point of the C2 lineage not to the central Mongolian plateau, but to the forest steppe transition zone, the ecological border where Siberian taiga meets open grassland, running from the Baikal region westward into what is now northern Mongolia and the Russian Buryatia. This is not Mongolia in any modern political or ethnic sense. It is a region populated in the deep past predominantly by Tungusic and Proto-Siberian peoples, whose descendants are today classified as distinct from the Mongolian ethnicity. The evidence suggests that the man called Genghis Khan, born to a clan whose oral histories point toward this exact geographic boundary zone, carried a genetic heritage that was not primarily Mongolian, as the modern world defines the term. The implication is not that he was a fraud, or that the Mongolian Empire was built on false foundations. The implication is that the categories we apply to the past did not exist in the past. Genghis Khan did not conquer as a Mongolian. He conquered as a Borjigin, a clan identity that preceded and exceeded any ethnic boundary we would recognize today. It is worth being precise about what the evidence does not show. There is no confirmed skeletal DNA from Temujin himself. No laboratory has sequenced his genome. Every analysis, including the work that Grok AI synthesized, rests on Y chromosome lineages traced through documented male line descendants and ancient populations from the same geographic region. The absence of a direct sample means the conclusion carries uncertainty. What the evidence shows is that the ancestral population most genetically similar to the Borjigin lineage is not the central Mongolian population. It is the forest steppe peoples to the north and west. That is not a small distinction. There is also the question of what Mongolian meant in 1162. The answer is almost nothing in the way the term is used today. The consolidation of a Mongolian ethnic and national identity, a process that took centuries and accelerated enormously under Soviet-era category making in the 20th century, happened after Genghis Khan, not before. He did not inherit a Mongolian identity. He created an imperial identity that later generations called Mongolian and claimed as their own. 16 million men alive today carry what the world calls the Genghis Khan haplogroup. Many of them are Kazakh. Many are Buryat. Many live in Russia, in China, in the forests of eastern Siberia, in communities that would not describe themselves as Mongolian by any cultural or linguistic measure. They carry this lineage not necessarily because Mongolian armies passed through their ancestors' villages, but because their ancestors may have shared the same pre-Mongolian genetic source that Temujin himself carried, a source older than the empire, older than the Steppe Confederation, reaching back into a time before the word Mongolia existed. The Mongolian national identity is real. The culture, the language, the history, undeniable. What is not real is the assumption that Genghis Khan was its ethnic product. He was more likely its ethnic architect, a man who took a label that barely existed and turned it into the largest contiguous land empire in human history. What the DNA cannot tell us is why. It cannot tell us what Temujin believed about his own origins, or whether the question of ethnicity held any meaning for a man who commanded armies of Turks, Chinese, Persians, and Slavs simultaneously. History records that he was buried in secret, that his grave was concealed deliberately, that the location was erased. 800 years later, the erasure is still working. The bones were never found. The genome was never sequenced. And the man the world calls Mongolian came from a place that was not yet Mongolia, carrying a lineage that stretches beyond any border he ever drew. What we called his identity may have been the first thing he conquered. If you're a man whose ancestry traces back to Kazakhstan, Siberia, or northern Mongolia, and the results came back with C2, did this change how you think about what that means? Or does 800 years feel too distant to matter?